Good morning, everyone. We are living the authentic life in the most amazing way. It is spring. We're so happy with the new fashion out there. It is Easter week and Passover week, and we have the most incredible guest, my friend and one of the best storytellers I've ever met, Damon Parker. And
Hello.
we even have Rob joining us today.
I'll admit it, I am a geek for Cartier. I love it, I love it, I love it. And I'm not just brown nosing. I have some of my personal collection and, of course, stuff I owned before I was married, but that's a whole other subject because my wife always gives me that look. But
yeah, that look. So Damon Parker is the most tenured Cartier associate in Houston. And he actually started in Las Vegas, where there's really some stories. I don't know if we can tell all those today, but where he really began to understand about the antique Cartier pieces. Because what we find so interesting is a lot of the luxury brands, the employees know about the current pieces that are out, but they don't have this incredible knowledge of the antique pieces. And of course, we love the pre-owned and the antique, and we're just so excited to talk to you today.
Well,
about
thank
your
you for
journey.
having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm flattered.
So, Rob, why don't you start with where did your Cartier journey start?
Well, as a young kid that loved watches, Cartier was out there, and then the Pasha was such a unique design on the watch, the way the crown guard protects
When was
it.
that, the 80s?
In the 80s, yes, in the 80s I started buying watches. Yeah, probably 1982 is when I bought my first good watch. I was 16 years old, a Rolex, running around doing stuff. Then I started buying some of the Cartier, Patek, etc. But what's crazy about Cartier is the Pasha. Explain to us about the Pasha, why it was made. Do you know the whole history?
Yes.
I know you do.
Yes, of course. Of course I do. So the Pasha watch was, Pasha, Turkish word meaning king or head of state. So the Pasha watch was originally made for the Pasha of Marrakesh in 1936. So now, prior to that time, we hadn't really made any watches that were considered sports or and were not water resistant. So the Pasha watch was actually our first water resistant watch. And we say water resistant, not waterproof, because Rolex uses that term, and that's really their term to use, which is so we
I
say
didn't know that.
water resistant, because
Okay.
Rolex really created waterproof watches with their Oyster Perpetual watch.
Interesting.
So in 1936 we created the Pasha watch for the Pasha of Marrakesh. Now, as legend goes, you know, he had wives and concubines and things like that. So the Pasha watch was made for him for his bathing pools, to wear in his bathing pools, which is why it needed to be water resistant. So
Now that's a story.
so that was originally 1936, and then the Pasha was launched to the public as a production watch in 1985.
Because you've mentioned that Cartier for so long was not for the public.
It really wasn't. It was, you know, the House of Cartier for the Maison was really for royal families, celebrities, dignitaries, politicians, really the elite. It wasn't until the 60s, in 1968, when an investment firm got together, Vendome Luxury Group got together, these gentlemen who were trying to sort of bring the brand back together. In 1942, the last of the three Cartier brothers passed away in 1942, and their children didn't take a lot of interest in running the brand and managing the boutiques on a global level. So the brand became very fragmented, globally speaking, and franchised out and became, you know, individual ownership, let's say. So in the late 60s, this group of gentlemen with Vendome Luxury Group said, you know, this is really important. This is such an important brand. Let's really bring it back together and sort of build a corporate structure to bring back the integrity of the brand. So that started in the 60s, and that was the beginning of the Must, or Les Must de Cartier collection. First item being a cigarette lighter in 1969, and then subsequently the Must tank collection. Now, the word must is not, you might hear in your world, in my world, of course, les mustes. It's not a French word, it's the word must in English. It means it's a must-have. That was the
I
foundation.
didn't know must was must-have.
It just means it's a must-have. And it was created in the 60s and then, of course, into the 70s, 1974, when we created our first accessories line of handbags and small leather goods. So it was just that it was a must-have.
And it was more of an entry level.
Entry level, so more common folk could afford to buy into the brand, because prior to that time, jewelry and watches, these things were made kind of as one-offs. There was no production line. Hence, the Love Bracelet in 1969 became our first production piece.
And who designed that piece?
And that was designed by Aldo Cipulo, a gentleman working for the Maison as a designer, created the Love Bracelet.
And he was Italian.
He's Italian-American.
Wait, you are Italian also.
Wait a minute. Did I know
Cangelosi
that?
maiden name?
Yes.
Oh.
No, I wouldn't have guessed that. Yes. So that was in 69. And something a lot of people may not realize, but of course the screw motif that's represented in the Love Bracelet and is an iconic image throughout so much of our collection, where that originally comes from. I'm sorry if this is just turning into a huge history class.
No, we
want
do
it
that.
to be.
We want history.
People are fascinated.
Okay.
Fascinating.
So the screw motif,
Uh-huh.
so originally actually comes from our Santos watch from 1904. Okay, so what we know about the Santos watch was created for the Brazilian aviator Alberto Santos Dumont.
Okay.
The Santos watch, this is a history question on Jeopardy and Trivial Pursuit. Cartier did put the first wristwatch on a gentleman, which was the Santos watch in 1904. The purpose, really out of practicality, to be able to put a wristwatch on him to control his aircraft, the controls of
Yes.
his aircraft, which was called the Demoiselle. We would know much, much later, just about a decade ago, the Demoiselle was a collection of watch. So anyway, to control the Demoiselle, his aircraft, that's why we put the watch on his wrist. Prior to that turn of the century, gentlemen carried time in their pockets. Now, we did not create watchmaking or anything like this. We're not saying that at all. But we did technically put the first wristwatch on a gentleman, and that was
Did you know that?
Santos Dumont.
No, I did not know that, but Dumont is also, you use that as a brand for some of your watches, don't you? A Dumont?
Yeah, so that would be, so in the world of Santos watches, so there is the Santos Dumont, which is the slim case on a leather strap, and that is most indicative of the first watch that was made for him in 1904. In 1987, we launched the Santos Galbe, which just means curved in French, the word galbe. That is the Santos watch on a metal bracelet, which is what most people know. Now, we did relaunch the Santos Dumont, you're right. We did relaunch the Santos Dumont several years ago, which is a slim case on an alligator strap.
So most of the Galbes are quartz, correct? But some were automatic.
Some were automatic, yes. Now, currently, all of the Santos Galbe are automatic. In the past, most of them were quartz movement, and there were some that were automatic, like the gentleman's sizes. Most ladies' size or small framed watches are going to be quartz movement.
And do you know why that is?
Tell me.
The size of the oscillating pendulum or the weight on the inside. On a small watch, the math doesn't work because you don't have enough mass to go around, and they can't be active enough to keep the mainspring wound up, from what I know.
Right. It does come down to the architecture of the watch. Really, is can it hold that type of movement without getting into something that's considered a complicated movement. For instance, we do make very slim watches and even can be small petite watches with a mechanical manual movement inside of it, but this is considered fine watchmaking. And also, demographically speaking, a female demographic doesn't tend to care about the movement portion as much as a gentleman demographic would tend to care about the movement of the watch.
We're so about the
Well, I don't
aesthetic.
mean some women do, yeah.
Some
I
do,
hardly,
but it's
I
yeah.
use my phone most of all now for
Right,
time,
right.
as opposed. I feel like a watch now is
Wait a second,
almost,
we're a watch company. We don't say
Right.
that.
But it's
Yeah.
more about style and what we feel like we're in the mood for that day.
Right.
And so, women for many years wore the smaller watches, but now we're seeing this trend towards larger. Do you feel like Cartier buyers are still, females are still connected to the smaller
I do.
size watches.
I saw this happening in the late 90s, early 2000s, that women were really, maybe mid 2000s, women were buying really big, chunky, bulky watches, and I don't see that as the trend anymore. As a matter of fact, for our lines, we're going back to the more petite,
Yes.
more reserved, more bracelet-y type of watches, which is why we relaunched the Panther watch. So, because it has that supple bracelet called Panther because of the link feels like the supple coat or the supple fur of a panther, like a second skin on your wrist. So we are seeing that trend going back to the smaller, more
watches.
delicate and petite watches, for sure.
And so I think Love is the series that most people know about and covet and want. When do you feel like it became kind of mainstream, that now that in Houston, Texas, a 16-year-old girl, a 12-year-old girl,
Yes.
Bella's friends win a Love ring?
Yes.
Like, that is incredible.
We sell a lot of these for graduation.
Yes.
The love rings to these kids now. Yeah.
It's
And that could be
crazy.
graduation from 8th grade even.
I know.
This is the thing. Yeah. Every year is a graduation. It's not just
We all
and
get a
I
tro-
never heard of this before.
Everyone gets a trophy or everyone gets a Cartier
Everyone
ring.
gets everyone gets a mini love ring, or
I received
yeah.
my first Cartier Love anything at age 37 when he gave me mine. So it is,
Yeah.
and it was something that I knew of Rolex, I knew of Cartier, but I don't feel like it was as mainstream as it is now.
Yes.
Are the number of units you sell now 2x, 5x, 10x of what it is in the 80s, or do they tell you those kind of numbers?
I don't know those numbers specifically, like from
Right.
the 80s. I can tell you, in my 24 years, I
Yes.
started in 98 at
Uh-huh.
Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas with Cartier. And I will tell you, for the retail world, that is the litmus test of your emotions and the barometer of your skills is to work in a store in Las Vegas in a casino, because
Yes.
you get every kind of human
Yes.
being from around the world that you can possibly imagine. And Las Vegas is one of these demographics and one of these markets that is a complete anomaly. There's nowhere like it in the entire world to even compare it to, even to other gaming cities like Monte Carlo or Atlantic City. It's just not the same at all. So you have to be prepared. It's like theater. You have no idea what's walking through your door.
And the most unlikely will spend the most money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you can't be a snob about, and not that you've ever been, but
No.
it's kind of, the luxury brands are known to, like, you have to
Yeah.
be dressed to go in. So tell us some of those.
So people do feel that way or apologize when they come in and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I can really afford to be here. I'm sorry I look the way I look. Listen, no tea, no shade. Like, I will trust, honestly, in our world of retail, you have somebody come into your store who's dressed to the nines. Okay, let's say dressed like us.
Yeah.
And right next to them, somebody comes in wearing athletic clothes.
Right.
I'm probably going towards the athletic clothes because 50% of the time, the person that comes in looking like us, dressed to the
Right.
nines, works in retail. So you don't need to dress up to come to my store. You don't need to wear all of your good jewelry. You don't need to do any of that. And especially in an environment like Las Vegas, Houston is a little bit more dressy, but in Las Vegas, so we would have these. I remember, so I'm from Oklahoma, and my family's in drilling in Oklahoma, so kind of country. I'm not country, but I'm Hollywood in my family. I'm the fancy one.
Baby, you are Hollywood.
But-
and I grew up in Fort Bend County hunting and
Yeah.
fishing, and look at me.
but this so this gentleman came in one time and he really looked homeless. Like he really did not look like he belonged even inside the hotel, much less in my store. He walks in and my other salespeople, colleagues or whatever, kind of ignored him and passed by,
Yes.
even passed by my director. And I said, you know what? He looks like my Uncle Terry. I'm going to go talk to him. So I went up and talked to him, and he asked to see this suite of jewelry that was in the window, which was this parure necklace, bracelet, and earrings. It's about $500,000 for this suite of jewelry. And he asked to see it, and I did show him. And he said, okay, well, my wife's in a poker tournament right now, and we'll come back later. I'd like to show this to her. And I said, okay, yes, sir, no problem.
I'll be
Here's my
back.
card. Come back.
Yes,
We
right.
close at midnight. It's like, just come whenever you
Whatever.
feel like it. Give him my card. So he came back a little later that night after his wife had finished the poker tournament, And he said, I was so shocked. He said, I'd like to show this to my wife. And we put it on her, and I said, all right, what do you think? And she said, what do you think I think? She
Right.
said, Daddy, we'll take it. To her husband, not me. And so he said, okay, there we go. Black MX, ready to go.
Fantastic.
And that was, you know, I was 24 years old. I was really new with the brand. I mean, not that I didn't know what I was doing. You know, the brand is so wonderful about their training, and I had been to Paris already with the company in Switzerland. So I know what I'm doing, but that kind of shot, you know, to sell something at that level at such a young age and so early in my career.
It was
and
just
so
invigorating. And $500,000 back
in the
then.
80s, that's like,
well, this was 98.
still, that's over $1 million now in real
Now,
dollars,
yeah,
probably.
yeah.
So that's outstanding.
Yeah. So,
I'd like to make a sale like that today.
Yeah, so it was pretty phenomenal. And you know, working in that kind of market, you just never knew what was going to happen on day to day. I had another client who, they're from San Francisco. They built wine cellars for Michelin restaurants and that sort of thing. And so they'd come in and they're buying, you know, love bracelets and just some basic, some standard iconic pieces or whatever. Not high jewelry or anything. Well, they had invited me to this, to the Bellagio, to the Picasso restaurant where they had done the wine cellar there. For a 12-course meal with all the wine pairing and all of this kind of thing. So I'm sitting next to Mrs., and we're on our third or fourth course, and she asked me about Paris, and we were talking about trips and traveling internationally and such, and she said, what's something that you miss about Paris? Let's say food, even if it's not French food, what do you miss? And I said, gosh, you know what? There's this amazing bird nest soup that I had there. And she said, oh, at the Place Vendôme, at the Ritz-Carlton in Place Vendôme. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And she said, oh, gosh, yeah, that is wonderful. She said, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, working. And she's like, oh, that's too bad. I was going to see if you want to have brunch at the Ritz-Carlton in Paris tomorrow. We're in Vegas at the Bellagio, of course. And I said, no problem. Let me call my director. So I excused myself, I called my director, and in a very Devil Wears Prada kind of moment, she says, yes, absolutely, this is your job.
Yes,
and I said,
go with them.
okay, so I come back to the table and I said, that'll be fine. And I always keep my, would always keep my, my bandoulier in the trunk of my car with a change of clothes and a toiletry kit, because it's Vegas, you never know what's gonna happen, right? So I said, I have a bag, and so she said, all right, well, let's finish our meal leisurely, and we'll have a splendid time, and then my husband's going to call the pilot, and then we'll go after dinner. We'll just go to the airport and get on their Gulfstream and fly to Paris, and that's what we did.
Fantastic.
And so were you able to take her to the Paris Cartier?
No, I didn't. It wasn't even about any of that. She wanted to go have brunch.
Just be with you.
Just to go to the Ritz-Carlton and have this bird nest soup in the aviary. And, I mean, we certainly, you know, did some little shopping around, but we didn't even go to the boutique there. So anyway, things like that just would happen to consistently. And I just feel like I just was never a person who would ever say no to anything. You know, I just thought, well, hey, this is life. What could possibly go wrong? You know what? If you're not harming kids and animals, I'm probably going to say yes. I mean, if it's legal, well, okay.
But you have been known to fly with clients to some pretty amazing opportunities.
Definitely.
Share some of those, because you have. Where have you gone recently? You were telling me Paris, or did you do some things in Canada?
Not recently.
Okay,
well, I
because
mean,
of COVID.
Because of COVID. So the last I was doing was going to see clients in Palm Beach, and in New York and California. Not so much New York. I haven't actually been overseas since before COVID.
Well, we're going hopefully May 21st. So maybe we can have a moment at the Cartier.
Yes.
In Paris. It's going to be, or I'll have to have the bird's nest soup at the Ritz-Carlton.
You know, if you know how it's made, you may not. We'll just let you try it first.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's actually not a French. That's not even French cuisine. It's Chinese. The bird nest soup, but they happen to have it there. So, anyway, I don't even know if that restaurant is still there anymore. I haven't been there in ages. I mean, this was 24 years ago when that experience happened.
It's all changing so much. It doesn't matter what you eat when you're in Paris. It could be a baguette on the street, and you'll feel incredible.
That's right.
So tell us about some of the most interesting pieces. So when you were in Vegas, you said that you learned so much about repairs that were coming in and the pieces, and you have the books. Now,
Right now we have the internet. Back at that time, now we have the luxury in our boutique here in Houston. We definitely have the luxury of having a service salon and a service department and in their roles in our service salon, which is amazing to have. Back in the old days, in most of our boutiques, we didn't have the luxury of a service salon or a service advisor. So everybody had to know how to do everything. It's just like you're in a smaller business, let's say. Everyone in the building's got to know how to do everything.
yes.
Wear every hat there is.
Wear every single hat. And so that's really my original training when I started was, if it's not just about selling, but it was about taking in repairs. And that was such a great experience because I really got to have my hands on older pieces, maybe some vintage pieces even. But you get, and also we had a lot of books and these sort of catalogs and these Bibles.
It's like encyclopedias.
These
essentially.
encyclopedias. And so in my spare time or free time, I was so enamored by the brand, and I just wanted to become so immersed in it, so much, and to be part of something that was, almost like the military. It became so much bigger than me, and I just delved right into it. So I would spend so much of my time looking through all of these archival books and things like that. And I have a pretty good photographic memory, so I would just remember where things were from. And now, to this day, people will bring things up to me, even from the service salon. These guys that work in the service salon are quite a bit younger than me. You only have your experience that you have, so they've only seen as much as they've seen, so they'll bring something to me and say, okay, what's your best estimate on this? And I'll say, August 82 to November of 87. They're like, how do you remember that? I have no idea. I just have a photographic memory, and I can just remember seeing things in all of these old books and archives and things like that. And it's a a constant learning and
Yes.
evolution over time. You never know everything. You can always improve. You can always know more. You can always do better. I just think that that's true in life. So I have all of my Cartier books, and I look through them still to this day, and I'm always learning something new and finding out, different things.
So share your most prized.
Oh, my
Yes.
enamel box. This is probably my favorite piece here. This I bought many years ago, and I was told this piece was given out by the King of Maharaja as gifts when people would come and visit the palace. Enamel, probably from the 20s-ish, maybe a little earlier by the style and cuts of the stones. But you tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so we were doing a lot of work for these royal houses from around the world, but especially during that time in the early 1900s to about the 1940s, we had really, really strong and deep relationships with the royal families of India or just the Far East in general. And so it was not uncommon for a lot of these types of things to be commissioned by a Maharaja or a dignitary of some kind from those families. And so this, definitely to me would be 1920s, maybe 1930s.
Just fascinating, fun pieces.
Yeah.
To me, it's just exciting. Can you imagine the wealth somebody had that this was a gift? Come on, hey, thanks for visiting me. Come into our country, and I'm going to give you this. And it held cigarettes, probably at the time.
Yeah.
And smoking was very in vogue then, and it's just what people did.
Right, everybody. Yeah.
So speaking of gifts, so many brands now gift celebrities to wear their pieces on the red carpet just for the night.
Right.
And so many famous women, Grace Kelly being one of them, the namesake of our baby.
Right.
Were those gifts? Were they purchased? Like, how did those relationships with Hollywood and royalty evolve? Because that's really fascinating now how we're trying to be like our royalty.
So going back about 10 years ago was when we really started doing more pieces for the red carpet as far as loaning jewelry. If you think back to the early 2000s or back into the 90s or even 80s, when you would hear about red carpet, oh, who are you wearing? Harry Winston was a big name that you would hear.
Yes.
Because Harry Winston was really known for loaning his jewels out to celebrities to get exposure, to wear them on the red carpet. But in most cases, those items were probably not being purchased. They were just on consignment for the purpose of these red carpet events and to be publicized. Well, Cartier never really did much of that until about 10 years ago. We did start to do that, and then we'll see pieces being mentioned in some films and like the Ocean's 8, and so we're doing a lot more of that than we used to, because in the past I think, well, my feeling on it would be, well, these are the people who can afford to buy this stuff, why would we loan it to them? But the times have changed. We don't have that luxury anymore. So, you know, you need to be able to put it on somebody who's notable and is going to get photographed and filmed and wearing your creation. So we really jumped more on that marketing wagon, I think, in the last decade especially.
So if Grace Kelly wore it, it was Grace Kelly's.
It was Grace Kelly's. Yes, that's right. Yeah, and we created many pieces for her.
Oh, you did?
Yes, as well as Elizabeth Taylor, but all of those pieces were purchased by themselves or their family, for sure.
Oh, how fascinating!
Yeah. Liz Taylor may be one of her many husbands.
And one of them twice. Yeah.
So we find it iconic. We talk about the Love bracelet, but the nail bracelet or the Juste Clou has become so hot lately. But wasn't that developed a long time ago also?
So, and a lot of people don't realize that because it seemed like it was brand new when it was launched in 2013.
Yes.
When actually the original launch date was in 1971. So if we think about, you know, the Love bracelet 1969, the Juste Clou 1971. So it is from the same generation of product and the same designer from Aldo Cipulo, who created the Love bracelet, created the Juste Clou bracelet in 1971. Now, for the Juste Clou, there's a lot of, you know, different theories of conversation about where people will say to me, as I'm telling you a story about the Love bracelet, there's a lot of history, a lot of lore to tell about that. But the Juste Clou, where's that design? It's a gold nail. It's just a nail wrapped around the wrist. And something that Cipulo was really known for was taking ordinary objects and making them into something precious. I mean, this is really luxury. So now we do know that Aldo Cipulo was a Catholic, Italian-American Catholic gentleman. So in one of the books that's dedicated to him about his life and his story, he does talk about some original inspiration for the Juste Clou, being that he was Catholic. You know, one of his ideas for the Juste Clou was creating a piece of jewelry that would represent the ultimate sacrifice. Of course, talking about Christ on the cross and being sacrificed. So now
it's Easter week and
now it's
Passover
Easter.
week.
Yes,
and Passover, both Easter,
Yes.
Good Friday on Friday, and Passover on Friday.
Yes, and my hairstylist, she's Laotian, and they're actually celebrating Laotian New Year this week. So it's interesting how there's so many rebirths, and so much of that is probably the calendar, not just the religious calendars, but also the calendars based upon the seasons and so forth.
Right, and lunar. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I would say in the 70s, there was a lot of things happening, really amazing things happening for women in business and in culture and things like that. So I think also I've heard some of my female colleagues say, you know, about the nails, she just nailed it, or, you know, things like that. About the Helen Reddy was very popular at that time. I am woman, hear me roar, and that sort of thing. So I think that can be a lot of inspiration wherever you need to find it there.
And that the vintage nail or vintage Juste Clou is super, super collectible.
Yeah.
And it's thicker, right?
It's bigger. They've just you've come out with a larger diameter.
So we have come out with a new larger diameter. So there was the classic one that was launched. Yes, which is the original and more like the original, although probably the original was a little bit thicker. So this new one is even thicker than that. And then there is a jumbo as well, which there's not many of them out there, but there is a jumbo. The size of the nail head is about the size of a quarter.
It's never in person. It's really,
really hunky. I mean, the tubing on it is about that thick. Yeah.
So would a woman wear that, or is it more of a man?
I have sold it only to women.
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And I've found that you size down in a
Correct.
nail from what your love bracelet
Correct.
size
Correct.
is.
So if you're a 17 in a love bracelet, you take a 16 in the Juste Clou.
And that's why the Juste Clou comes in size 15.
Correct. Correct.
And the new Love also comes in 15.
And the new Love also comes in 15.
For the 12-year-olds?
Right, exactly.
For those graduating from 8th grade.
But
so like these are a 16, and these are a little tight, but also because I wear them above my watch, people ask me, how should you wear it? And I say it's whatever you feel most comfortable with. Is there a way that Cartier says they should fit?
So the idea is that it is somewhat tailored to your wrist, not spinning around like a bangle, because it's not a round bangle. So you don't want it to be spinning around like a bangle. You want it to be somewhat tailored, passing over the wrist bone comfortably. I would say if your intention is to sort of permanently wear it with a watch, I like to see it a little
Above
more
the wrist
snug,
bone, yes.
so that it's not raking,
clanking.
and also not raking over the top of your watch, damaging the bezel, the crystal of your watch. So I like them to sort of stay in their seating chart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's been some development in technology in these bracelets
yes,
also,
with the
because the
screws
early
and-
ones had removable screws.
Correct.
And 8 or 10 years ago, you came out with the screws that stay in?
So actually, that was yes. So the lock-in system changed, but it was quite actually even longer than that. It was in 2009.
Okay.
It was
Oh,
because of a 40-year patent on the original locking system expired, and so the new locking system was created, and that was launched in 2009.
I didn't realize it was a patent issue. I thought it was maybe more convenience, because to take them on and off and try to put that screw back in is a two-person job sometimes.
It is a two-person job, and there's a lot for the version 1 bracelets. You know, you take it apart, and that little screw, I mean, it's tiny. It's very easy to lose. It falls in your shag carpet or whatever. So, and then they can be replaced, of course. But it was, so maybe some practicality, but it was more about a patent situation and changing the locking mechanism. And also just the convenience of being able to loosen it and the screws back out, but not completely. So you're not losing any of the movable parts, basically.
Now, didn't the shape change a little bit too on the original version? Because I've seen when they stack the original locking system and the new system, there seems to be sometimes a little difference in the shape of the bracelet.
Well, the shape didn't really change, but you know, the internal component is a little bit different because it's got the male and female parts that have to go into each other. The structure, the architecture of that closure is a little bit different. So that part did change. Overall, the aesthetic of the external, there might have been a little bit of a difference.
Where they don't lay exactly flat, whereas like these two could be completely flat. And people ask me sometimes, should I do a bigger size next to the smaller? And I generally say stay with the same size.
Stay with the same size because you want them to align as much as possible. We always say stay with the same size. Even if you've received one as a gift that maybe you feel is a little too big for you, I would still go with the same size. Wherever you started, that's where we need to continue on the same sizing.
Okay, so they come in white gold, yellow gold, rose gold, and then tell us about the Trinity story with the different gold colors there.
Yeah.
Because we haven't talked about the Trinity with the original. When was that?
So
developed?
the original was 1924, and it was the ring.
It's almost 100 years old now.
Yeah, almost 100 years old. And so the original Trinity ring was made for the poet and playwright Jean Cocteau. And so the 3 golds representing for Cartier. Of course, you can take Trinity into religious connotation.
We bring in that Catholicism
and
again. Here we go.
We don't do that with Cartier. We're not aligning ourselves with any one particular sect of religion. So for Cartier, the 3 golds represent, or the Trinity for Cartier representing love, fidelity, and friendship. Oh. So that's the origin of the Trinity ring. The style of the ring, the 3 interlocking rings that roll comfortably, taken traditionally from Russian wedding rings, which were those rolling ring, basically type of structure.
So did Tiffany do it after Cartier, or were they all? Was the Russians were doing it first, and then brands kind of followed suit?
I think just brands would follow suit with that. Now ours was 1924. I'm not sure when Tiffany's rolling rings came out, But my feeling on this, with any designer in any house of luxury, anybody who makes anything, there's only so many shapes in the world. This is geometry and math. There's only so much that exists. So there's going to be crossover and repeat and things like that. So, but so that was originally 1924. And then sometime, I guess probably late 90s, early 2000s, we started seeing a lot more in the Trinity collection coming out. Bangles in that collection.
Yes.
The round bangles as well as earrings.
I don't know if we have any here, but with something that we have quite
pendants.
often.
And then you started pavéing them also.
And then in the 90s, we did start doing the Trinity rings in fully paved or partially paved. Some with that kind of, one of them called Constellation, which has 5 bezel set diamonds in each of the bands. And so there's been a lot of animation over the years. I mean, we've done Trinity even in high jewelry pieces. With these sautoir necklaces, with the Trinity rings throughout, and then with different colored freshwater pearls in like apricot, lavender, and cream color pearls to match sort of the different colors of the 3 tones of gold. So that was also in the 90s into the mid 2000s.
But your expertise is in diamonds.
Yes, my expertise is I do a lot of diamond business, yes, and we are seeing that business growing as people are starting to get engaged and want to get married again. Now that families can start to come together after these 2 years, we saw obviously a huge lapse of people buying things like this and getting engaged because people couldn't feel like they could have weddings where their whole both sides of their families could attend, and we're seeing that trend coming back. So
people, I think, are maybe scared or intimidated coming to Cartier to get an engagement ring, but you have engagement rings that start at $10,000?
$5,000.
$5,000.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, we have all of our stones come with a GIA, so anything over 0.18 or 18 points. Anything over 18 points comes with a GIA certificate.
And you guys tell about GIA because not everybody listening
GIA
knows.
is the Gemological Institute of America. They have offices in the U.S., in Asia, and in India also. But they're a non-biased grading, only grade diamonds. They don't buy and sell jewelry. They don't do anything. And their certificate is good anywhere in the world. I mean, it's
Whereas an appraisal
isn't. But I mean, they're fantastic because they're non-biased.
Cartier appraisal has meaning, but we get people that come in with appraisals and say, this is supposed to be worth $50,000, and
we always ask and say
it's a this whatever color clarity, and if it doesn't have a GIA certificate with it, it's only worth the paper that the appraisal is on sometimes.
That must be a challenge for you guys taking in these pieces.
Because we're the messenger telling them.
Right. We have to tell them that this appraisal from some jewelry store in New Mexico that says it's worth $40,000. I said, well, it's not really what that is, but GIA, it is what it is,
And Cartier, that name alone also innately carries a value on the pre-owned market because it's an exceptional more than just a GIA piece from someone else.
Right, and I imagine the challenge for you also is authenticating because there's a lot of copies, a lot of fakes out there, and I know that's a big part of
it's a big challenge
for you guys because you know what you know, and you're probably as much of an expert as I am, as much as you've seen on your side of the business. But there's great
copies. There's great copies out there, and
now with mined diamonds, it's also difficult if you don't have a GIA, or with drilled diamonds. Does GIA give a certificate for a drill?
They will. They'll put a note in the bottom, laser drilled. And there'll be an asterisk on there, and it's in black and white. You can see that it says laser drilled because that was a technique they did in the 70s and 80s. If a diamond had a black spot in it that you could see visibly, they could take a laser drill, a really fine drill, put a hole to that spot, soak it in an acid, and it would turn that black into white or clear inclusion, and it would make the diamond visibly prettier. It's not a technique they really use anymore. We don't really laser drill stuff because they've got an ability now with machinery and technology to cut and figure out a rough better.
Right.
But also on the love bracelet, for a little time, they did make a platinum love bracelet.
We did.
Very rare.
You know, we retired the platinum version. It was in 2012, 2012, 11 or 12. And the reason is, so when 20-something years ago when I started, we did not. And we had a lot of requests for a platinum love bracelet. So finally, we made a love bracelet in platinum, and we hardly sold any of them. Because the price was twice the price of the white gold. So people said, I really want it in platinum. But then when the price for the white gold, let's say, is $7,000 and the price for the platinum one is $14,000, then they say, oh, okay, well, they look the same.
Yeah,
I mean, to an untrained eye, they do look the same. Part of that reason is because our white gold has a platinum content to make the gold white in color, not nickel. Because some people might have allergies to nickel, and nickel is commonly used to make the gold white in color, and we don't.
It's much cheaper to use nickel than
yeah.
it is to use platinum in there to keep the color, and it's a purer color with your white gold, because white gold is really yellow gold with platinum added to it to change the color.
Which is why also our white gold pieces are more than the yellow gold or rose gold partners. So yeah.
And
math. There we go. More math again.
More math.
So there have been so many supply chain issues around the world with luxury. People weren't able to travel. We were concerned when COVID hit that people were not luxury, but what we found that everyone had so much
free time.
Let's
go shopping and make ourselves feel better.
So tell us about how you've seen the Cartier business changing through COVID.
Significant growth. You know, we went to an appointment-based model, and there's certainly challenges with that. We don't want to turn away anybody's business. You know, your business, everybody's business is important to us. No matter the size of the purchase, everything matters. Everything is important, you know, and we want to be available as we possibly can. But our goal from the corporate structure on down to the individual boutiques is to protect the employees and to protect the guests that are coming in and to control capacity. So we went to the appointment-based model. This can be really challenging when you've never had a business model like that before, and suddenly it feels like the doors are closed and you're in the River Oaks district having lunch with your gals and you have a glass of wine and now it's time to go shopping. And it sort of eliminates that, you know, spontaneity and that impulse purchasing and things like that. We will take walk-in guests if we have somebody available to serve you, essentially.
And you can call, too. Well, say they're at Toulouse and they're having their second glass of wine. Hey, let's call and see if we can get in 30 minutes.
You can call or stop by. You can call your salesperson if you already have an established relationship. We definitely encourage, we all have our own corporate cell phones. We encourage you to text or call us individually. We will set appointments for you. Ourselves, we have a concierge team dedicated to these roles. To receive our guests, and very polite, and
they'll apologize if there's not a space,
and very accommodating. Yeah.
But I have to say that it makes for. I mean, we've done that here, and I've shared this with you. We feel like we're going to continue to be by appointment, because if your clients come in and you're not available for them, then they're not getting the best experience, and they're not getting the time that they deserve. So. I think people are responding to it in a way that's productive, and then you're able to really accommodate and show them what you have that they want, and maybe show them what they really want that they didn't even know that you have, because you can invest the time and not be rushing to the next person.
And sometimes it is a fact-finding mission. You know, I have some ladies come in together in a group, and they want to look and they want to get their sizes, because a lot of times the husbands don't always know the size of the bracelet or the
Mother's
ring.
Day's around the corner. I need to know, am I a 16, a 17, or an 18? Just subtly tell your husband a couple before.
And you can give a wish list for them, right? Oh, she's more fond of this watch.
Correct.
If you're in this price range,
that's exactly right.
This is an option
We go in the client profile. There's a tab, an icon to put in a wish list. We put everything in there. We know the sizes. We know all the preferences. So we know how to take that journey together, you know, to build your collection. And in the end, and you know, obviously from your business as well, a lot of times this is a journey. Not everybody can afford to come in and take everything that they want at once. Most people cannot. So it is a journey to take with your clients, and it is about building those relationships. So sometimes you need to come in and do that sort of thing. You don't have to leave with a shopping bag. I mean, we like that, but you don't have to do it
Every
don't
time.
be intimidated by that. You say, well, I'm not ready to buy now. That's okay. You can come
Yes,
in and
and
work
look.
with me, and let's decide what's best for you, and we'll build a plan. And yeah.
Okay, so we've already reached the end of our time, but
Oh.
so
Oh,
we
I
have
have one
a few
more. I have one
minutes.
more
Yeah.
question.
No, you can. And then I also want to ask you. Well, you go.
So the must collection
Yes.
was the must-haves.
That's right.
You made Vermeil watches, which was
Correct.
the gold plate over sterling.
Correct.
Do you have something in that price point now still, or where can you get a tank watch? What do those start at? Because that's an iconic piece of yours.
Yeah, so we're not doing the Vermeil or the gold-plated pieces at all anymore. We have recently relaunched the Must Tank, which is in stainless steel on a leather strap or a metal bracelet.
So it is in stainless steel. Okay.
It is in stainless steel. It is the Must Tank. The case of the watch is very similar, mocks the silhouette of the original Louis Cartier tank, more rounded edges. The previous Tank Solo was a little bit more squared off on the bracelet and the case. So now the new Must Tank is the more rounded and sort of romantic lines.
And those start under 5,000?
2,700.
2,700.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing a real switch to yellow gold? Or is there still a pretty even division?
I can tell you that because we're a European company, most of what we sell, when we're talking about yellow gold and rose gold, in Europe and Asia, we mostly sell rose gold.
Okay.
Yellow gold is mostly what's sold in North America and South America.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so yellow gold is definitely the most sought after, and that's what we sell the most of. But conversely, it's what we make the least of.
Really?
We just have less to offer typically in yellow gold as we do rose gold, because rose gold globally is what we sell more of.
And what's interesting is because of supply and demand on the pre-owned market, the yellow gold Love, it trades at a higher price than the white gold
Right.
Love, even though the white gold retail is more.
It's technically more expensive, right?
Yes.
Right.
Isn't that fascinating?
Right.
And then what about diamond rings? Now that people are going back to yellow
Yeah.
gold, we're not really seeing that people are switching to yellow gold bands because they like the idea of the platinum against the diamond. Are you
Right, the
seeing
solitaires.
that go back?
The
to
solitaires are still going to be in platinum.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not really seeing anything coming out, changing the classic solitaire to a yellow gold or rose gold setting. We have them, some, but not much. It's still mostly all platinum. In it for engagement rings is mostly always going to be platinum for us.
And is round the most popular shape still?
Round is still, yeah.
And then I'm seeing oval has been a big trend in the last few years
We are
also.
seeing oval, and the last time we really saw this in the diamond world, I think, was probably in the 80s or 90s for the oval marquee cuts, sort of more some of those fancy cuts. But we're seeing some of these kids now, kids in their 20s, remember their mothers or their grandmothers' pieces of jewelry, in these oval and marquee cuts. So I'm getting people asking for things like that. Round is still the most sought after. It is the best way to cut a diamond, etc. But ovals are having a
resurgence.
A resurgence, yeah.
And if you don't have it, you can have it shipped in. So
Correct.
It's
Correct.
not just what you have in inventory.
No. I mean, I have what I have in my case and some in understock. But in most cases, we need to curate this. We need to sit down and have a conversation, talk about what's most important to you in a diamond. What are you looking for? What's the budget? And then I look into my resources and I bring the pieces in for a secondary or third or fourth appointment to.
So you don't have to fly to New York to see an exhibit.
You don't have to.
Or Paris. You
No,
could
no.
bring the pieces here.
We
for
bring them
people
to-
see.
we
and
bring them
there's a lot
here.
of the series that come through.
Correct,
The exhibits
yeah.
that you have that are really exceptional.
Correct. Yeah, we have trunk shows at different times of the year. So we'll have different collections being brought in, high jewelry and things like that. So.
I've just left our time.
We could have done
Well,
this for
thank
2
you
hours.
so much.
That means he can come back.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Is that
having
how you say it in French?
Pardieu.
Yes, my wife
My
speaks French.
Texas accent.
But
Like
only
Grace
if-
Kelly.
Grace Kelly's with us. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, she's the show stealer as usual.
I
Yeah.
know, her snoring
Wonderful.
keeps us all awake. All right, thanks guys. What an incredible day. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Until next time.
Awesome. Thank you.